She's like, "It'll happen when you least expect it." And I'm like, "What?" That was right around a time when in my life I was experiencing like a lot of kind of trippy stuff. And so
How
that
so?
um right when the pandemic hit, I like saw a couple of UFOs actually like in a short period of time. And
Where?
one was in Laurel Canyon where I lived in LA and kind of crazy. And then the other was in Silver Lake actually. And then I guess I saw a third, but that was like far in the distance. And so like that was a little more unclear.
What did you see?
In each case.
Well, let's start with the first one.
So yeah, so Laurel Canyon, it was actually it's a really trippy story. I was walking with this girl I was kind of dating at the time, beautiful Costa Rican girl, really nice. And we were walking, and for whatever reason, like one of us brings up aliens. Like, do you believe in aliens? And I was like, yeah, like I'm actually kind of interested in that. And she was like, I definitely believe in aliens. And I was like, I would love to like meet an alien. That would be awesome. Like we're just, I don't know, like messing around. And she's like, it'll happen when you least expect it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that interesting. But like, that was like this really interesting like point that it was kind of like this philosophical point that she was making. And we're walking by a guy who has a metal detector, and he's like, I don't know, like panning for gold or something, but it's in Laurel Canyon, and it's like it's sundown. It's like, I don't know, 6:30 or 7 or something. Like it makes like no sense. Like, why is this guy with like a metal detector? He's like looking for it, as she's saying, like this will happen when you stop looking for it. And so like we walk by this guy, and I'm like, okay, like cool. We like move on to other subjects or whatever, and we're having like a great time. And I just see like this clearing like above the Laurel Canyon's full of trees. So this little clearing, and just this crazy craft, not like a circular craft. Like it looks like a school bus or something in the air. It's the weirdest looking thing. I've had a couple of people who have told the story to send me like possible analogs of this thing since. But it looked like nothing I could just ever explain.
How
like that.
close?
Maybe 50, 60 feet, like not far. Yeah. And it just like goes over the treetops. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And then she says that she saw it keep going over the treetops and then like vertically descend like down. Yeah. And I didn't see that part. But like, yeah, that was like a really trippy experience where I was like, what the hell was that?
And this is just a regular walk.
It's just a regular
sober,
walk.
chilling.
Sober, chilling. Yeah, not on anything. Yeah. I mean, we could bring her on. She's still a friend of mine.
Yeah.
She would corroborate it.
You keep them around. But so that's like 2020 or?
This was 2020. Yeah. Okay. 2020. Yeah, this was 20 because it was after the pandemic. Yeah.
So like that happens.
Yeah.
Is there a moment the next day where you're like, holy f-? Or does that happen like right away where you're like, holy f-?
No, I mean, right away you're like, this is insane. Like, what is this? But it weirdly, I think if you're into the topic, it was more like confirming. It was like, okay, like at that point I had like been plugged in and out. Like I had met Jacques Vallée and I had met Gary Nolan, some of these people. And like, I had felt like, okay, this stuff is real. And so it wasn't like insanely ontologically shocking. It was more like confirming. It was more like, oh, you really should like look into this stuff because like, I think this stuff is really real.
Yeah. When was the first, like, I always say when we're talking about this topic, yeah. I had not, my whole life, I just assumed aliens existed. It was mathematically like this galaxy's huge. There's life out there. Never thought about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was sitting there like, wow, I wonder where they are. And then my producer, Alessi, who's not here today, he went and made Moment of Contact with James Fox in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I was really getting to know him well at the time, and he knew so much about this stuff, and he really got me. I'm like, you got me a bit. And so I really started looking into it and looking at the history of it or whatever. Yeah. But like, were you someone, as a little, even like as a little kid, you were reading up on this and things, like it was always there, or did it really come later once you were meeting the Jacques Vallées of the world?
Not any UFOs. I think I had like a trippy worldview as a kid. Like I didn't think of it as that, but I had this godfather who like writes books with so my dad's like a self-help author and psychologist. And my godfather's this guy named Phil Stutz, who Jonah Hill actually made a Netflix documentary about. And he's this like really trippy psychiatrist who like is very interested in like Rudolf Steiner. And like, I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is like 19th century and early 20th century Austrian philosopher. But he's very interested in like esotericism and has like this like wacky alternative worldview that involves the Ark of the Covenant, like different like civilizational cycles. Like he's claimed to like be like kind of clairvoyant and like see like lights around people's head, like really trippy stuff. But then he's also like one of the forefathers of like modern organic farming techniques. So I always look for like the intersection between rigor and trippy. I think there's a lot of the trippy woo stuff, and you can kind of like out of hand dismiss a lot of that stuff. But when you see like trippy and also rigorous and like how the person's contributed to the real world, like that's always been very interesting, as a heuristic. And so I was into Steiner, and like I would read some of this stuff, but I'd always compartmentalize it. I was always like, this is like this stuff's real over here. Like I was a history major, and like always very ambitious in like a worldly sense. And then the trippy stuff, that was just like kind of like a fun thing or something. And then I think the two started to cohere maybe a little pre-pandemic. Like I'd read American Cosmic by Diana Pasulka. She's this religious scholar, religious studies professor from UNC Wilmington. And she wrote about the UFO thing as like a modern kind of religious phenomena. And she wrote it's such a trippy book, man, because like the first half of the book is like this almost like literary critique of modern ufology, where it's like this thing was like built in like a Disney studio. It's like a psyop, like media like shades the way we perceive and recollect a lot of these UFO experiences, which by the way I do believe. But you're halfway through the book and you're like, oh, this is like not a real thing. Like this is fully fabricated and constructed. This is like a deep state thing or whatever. Like, they want you to believe in UFO, whatever. Maybe it's like experiment with cult creation, or like look at like belief system. I don't know. There are various ways you could spin it, tech protection, whatever. And then like halfway through, you realize she's actually like starting to go down into like the rabbit hole of like UFO stuff, and like the observer and the observed like kind of like meld or whatever. And like all of a sudden she doesn't have like this impartial distance, and like she becomes this like UFO convert in a sense herself. And it's just such a like mind fuck. It really is this trippy thing.
You did a great podcast with her. Well, I mean, you do like documentaries. That was a great documentary interview sit down.
Thank you,
with Diana.
She's the best. She's awesome, and I think she's almost in some sense like a modern mystic or something herself. Like she's clearly like this intense truth seeker. So I think the two cohered like around the kind of trippy random history of intellectual history, and then the UFO stuff really cohered around the pandemic. And interestingly, I think there were a record number of UFO sightings in 2020 as well, just like en masse and large. I think the pandemic itself, when you pause and you evaluate your life and you're like at home and you're not like in this like kind of busy mindset, I think you start to experience maybe an expanded worldview, and you start to think about like some of these deeper existential questions, and maybe interact with other worlds or other timelines.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.